G'day lads and ladies, and welcome to this week's episode of What's Up Mate, where everything is live, including the conversations. This podcast is aimed at electricians and refrigeration technicians living and working in Australia. But if you're listening in from elsewhere, you're welcome to come along for the journey. The aim of this podcast is to provide extra learning resources for apprentices and tradespeople to help fill a void in our industry, which I have discovered by chatting to industry leaders, apprentices and educators. I hope you learn a few things as well as have a laugh along the way. You're with your host, Jake Sparrow. Now, let's get a conversation going. All right, guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode, or should I say this year's first episode. Our last episode was about 8 months ago. Apologies for the big delay in between episodes. Obviously, October in Australia, starting to get pretty warm. We focus predominantly on refrigeration and air conditioning. So it's been a pretty long and intense summer here. Some of you might know I'm also a volunteer firefighter, so that keeps me very, very busy in the summer months. So between refrigeration, air conditioning and firefighting, you can just imagine there's not a lot of time, especially when you throw in 3 kids and their sports in the mix too. So really appreciate you guys. There's been a fair few of you actually, who reached out to see when the next episode's going to drop. I lied a little bit. I said it would be end of last month, but here we are. It's now actually the first day of winter here in Australia, so yeah, almost 2 whole seasons have gone through since the episode, so again, apologise for that. We're going to carry on from where we left off with sections of the ASNZS 3000, so the Aussie wiring rules. We finished up with Section 5 last year. We're going to move on to Section 6. So Section 6, for those of you who don't know, is all about wet areas. So Section 6 being all about wet areas, it refers to a lot of tables. So this one's going to be really visual. So I'm just going to give a very brief summary on what you expect to see in Section 6. Now, I don't pretend to be any form of an expert on Section 6. I still, day to day, will be checking, on first fixes, we'll be checking Section 6 for the wet area clauses and looking at the tables. It's a pretty common thing to be doing when you're doing new homes or commercial. Especially as homes are getting smaller and smaller, bathrooms are getting smaller and smaller. So we need to really be smart about where we're putting power points, light switches, light fittings, pendant lights if they're wanting them in the wet areas can be quite tricky. Big no-no for wet areas is any sort of switchboards, etc. Or any sort of electricity generation systems. Not that you're going to have too many times that might come up that somebody wants a solar inverter installed within a wet area, but just something to keep in the back of your mind. So Section 6, we're basically going to break down the do's and don'ts of electrical installations in wet and moist areas. That includes places like bathrooms, pools, saunas, fountains, commercial kitchens, and even hosing down zones. We'll also have a brief chat about cool rooms, freezer rooms, and that stuff too. So zones are pretty well everything in this section. So really brief example around zones. The standard defines zones around water sources like Zone 0, Zone 1 and Zone 2, each with increasing distance from the water. Basically, the closer you are to the water, the tougher the restrictions are on what kind of electrical equipment we can install. For example, in a shower, Zone 0 is inside the water container itself. Only special low voltage gear is allowed, or extra low voltage or SELV gear is allowed. Zone 1 extends around Zone 0. Very limited equipment, and it must also be RCD protected. Zone 2 is going to give you a little bit more flexibility, but it still demands a fair bit of caution in where we can and can't place items. Number 2, really, water and electricity equals restrictions. So many common electrical devices are outright prohibited in certain zones, and even if they are allowed, they need to meet specific ingress protection ratings, which are IP ratings, meaning they can withstand splashes, jets, or full immersion in water. Another cautionary item is pools and spas. They're a whole different beast. So Section 6 dives into clearances, bonding and zoning for pools, spas, tubs and even paddling pools. Basically, any pool under 600 litres, 680 litres are treated differently than larger ones. That's an update from the previous 500 litre rule. Fountains and water features, if it sprays or splashes, it's covered. This part of the section helps prevent dangerous wiring situations in decorative fountains, pools, ponds and garden water features. all of which we still need to meet strict zoning and protection requirements. Saunas and refrigeration rooms, they're in here too. Extreme humidity or condensation in these spaces can make standard installations unsafe. Obviously saunas, we're looking at steam generally is a big issue, really hard. Obviously steam can get anywhere that air can, so we need to think about that. We also need to have a think about what sort of fittings we will put in, whether they're rated for that extreme positive temperature. And then we also got the issue about refrigeration rooms, so cool rooms, freezer rooms, etc. We need to be really smart about obviously the negative temperatures we might be seeing. Just for an example, most cool rooms we're sitting around 4 degrees Celsius. They're not as dangerous as a freezer room, which we might be sitting anywhere from minus 18 and below. We get a lot of issues with the coldness bringing moisture into fittings that aren't sealed correctly through condensation in refrigeration stuff. So we really need to make sure we're using suitable glanding for those things. Little tip on that is we gland our cables in to our fittings, so we don't actually run conduit into our fittings. So we'll just use some orange circ through the top of the freezer room panel into a one-way J-box. That'll be then glanded off and sealed. We'll have about 150 mil of exposed orange circular cable between the gland on the junction box and then with it to our live fitting. So there's no way any vapors can get into that fitting because it's all glanded off with the black nylon glands. Any screw fixings, we try not to use any screw fixings through the fittings themselves. If we do, they're sealed up very well with silicon. Silicon in that minus 18 degrees can actually break down quite quickly, so we try and avoid it. So you'll notice a lot of the weatherproof batten light fittings, like the 1200 mil batten lights that you get, have actually got some stainless steel clips that we will screw to the cool deck panel. Then we will mount our fittings through those mounting options from the the light manufacturers, so there's actually no screws through our fittings. It just prevents any potential for water ingress into those rooms, or into those fittings inside those rooms, I should say, sorry. We also have to think about places like abattoirs, food prep rooms, breweries, vehicle wash down bays, etc., where we've got operators using hoses, high pressure washers. In the commercial kitchens, they've got the handheld sprays where you can spray the dishes. We need to think about all this sort of stuff when we're designing and installing electrical installations, or even maintaining them. They might not actually have ever been installed per any sort of a standard, or if perhaps the kitchen's been remodeled and we need to start to adhere to those exclusion zones. So there you have it, guys and girls. Section 6 is basically the lifeguard of the wiring rules around water. It's there to make sure that whenever water and electricity meet in a situation where we're installing, maintaining, safety is always going to be paramount in there. So if you're looking at designing a spa, backyard water features, pools, bathrooms, laundries, kitchens, washdown areas, etc., just have a bit of a read and really understand what you're doing with Section 6, because unfortunately water and electricity don't mix that well. So very short and sharp, this one, guys and girls. Really appreciate you guys being patient for the drop of this next episode. It's been great chatting to you, a fair few of you guys out on social media, bumped into a few of you out on building sites as well, but also even a few of you at the wholesalers. So just keep on doing what you're doing. I'm glad you're all listening in, because if you're listening to this, really want to make yourself the best Sparky or Friggy you possibly can. Really appreciate it. Let's catch you on the next one.